Hi, this is Remembering the Past, the show where we talk about people who've died recently who've had a profound effect on our history, our society, or our culture. Tonight we're going to have another brief chat with Harrison Smith, one of the top obit writers for the Washington Post. He's part of the best obit staff in North America. And we'll be talking with him about one of his recent subjects, Dr. Milton Edgerton, who died recently at age 96. We'll also take a few minutes to explore Harrison's philosophy on the craft of the obituary. Harrison, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on today.
Thanks for being on with us. Harrison, for those unfamiliar with Dr. Milton Edgerton, could you tell us a little bit about him?
Absolutely. So, long story short, he was a plastic surgeon at a time when plastic surgery hardly existed as a discipline. So when he was trained in the 1940s, he was treating veterans of World War II, these troops that had come home to a military hospital in Pennsylvania, were scarred by bullets or by flames on the battlefield, and he was using some very new surgical techniques to try and rehabilitate faces, ears, arms, any number of body parts. So he goes on to have this remarkable 5-6 decade career in which he treats just about anyone. He's seeing cancer patients, burn victims, he's reconstructing hands and breasts and ears. But the thing that he's most known for, and that really caught my attention when I heard of his passing, was that he was really on the forefront of treating transgender patients. So these were patients who were actually called transsexuals at the time. And since probably the early 1950s, you could get a sex reassignment operation in Europe, in Morocco, in Mexico, and I think in Japan as well. But these were people who would try to find some doctor, any doctor, who would be able to perform these sex reassignment procedures and allow them to basically confirm their gender identity. So, they were transgender men with female reproductive organs, and through this procedure, they were able to live in bodies that they felt naturally comfortable with. At the time he starts doing this, it's just a few scattered surgeons in the United States performing the procedure. And he is one of about 3 physicians and surgeons at Johns Hopkins who starts something called the Gender Identity Clinic. They see probably about 24 patients over a period of 10 years, which isn't that many just as a raw number, but it's hugely influential. It's the first time that a transgender surgery team has been established at an academic hospital. Really the first time that any surgical unit like this has existed in the United States.
Harrison, let me follow up on that to a certain extent. A lot of people frequently ask why a certain person gets an obit. Some of them are obvious, your statesmen, your show business people. But when you're looking for a subject for an obit, what are the things you look for and why you choose them?
Yeah, that's a good question because it varies quite a bit. There are those obvious people that you mentioned, like your president, your Supreme Court justice, and there's something just about the job that they had that is in and of itself newsworthy. Any senator is going to get an obituary in the Washington Post. But then this whole other category exists of people who either had fascinating lives, they were just remarkable people. That is, they did things that were daring, that were impressive, that were amusing, that would be, fun to talk about at a cocktail party. And then there are people who just had an enormous impact on the community, on the country, on the world, whatever the case may be. There's some kind of mix of those 2 second factors that combine to make a person really compelling for an obituary. You want to have someone who's maybe changed their field in some way, and ideally has also done so in maybe a charming and interesting, a fun and an exciting way that makes a good story.
Harrison, different writers approach their subjects differently. I like the way you do yours. How do you approach your subject when you sit down to write about them? What are the things you're looking for? How do you attack the subject that you're writing about?
Sure. So I guess the biggest thing I'm looking at is impact. That word I used just a few minutes ago. Like in figuring out whether we're going to write about them, it's did they have some larger impact? And in trying to frame the story, it's, well, where did they really make a difference? That can be in a whole number of ways. Like and the word is really freighted. It sounds like heavy and pompous almost. But you could have an impact in comedy. I mean, Robin Williams, I don't know if transformational is the right word, but he certainly changed his field in the 90s and the aughts. So with someone like Milton Edgerton, I was trying to think, how did he change plastic surgery, if that's accurate? Or how did he change the way that medicine is practiced in the United States? That's a huge point, and very rarely is it possible to even say, like, this person specifically transformed their field or changed history. But it's a good jumping off place, I think, to think about what's really lasting. Years from now, when everyone who knew this person is no longer around, there may still be some echoes of their work and of their career, and I try to figure out what those echoes might be and anticipate those.
Okay, final question, Harrison. This one's somewhat personal. Some professions, like the clergy and the military, we're seeing fewer obits than there were in the past. How about doctors? I mean, I'm a doctor, so I want to know this. Are there fewer obits of physicians than there were in the past? And if so, what do you think the reasons for that are?
I'm not sure. I personally have not noticed a decline in the number of medical or physician obits, but maybe what it is there's just a decline of obits in general, that there are fewer stories that are being run because there are fewer newspapers and smaller staffs that are writing these stories. It used to be that you would get a very long and robust obituary if you were a physician practicing medicine in Washington, regardless of the impact that you had or whether you developed some novel procedure. And now we'll do a short 2-paragraph notice giving people an overview of your life, but certainly there are much fewer full-length stories. I don't think that that's any slight to the profession per se. I think it's just goes back to what I was talking about, in that when we look for stories, we're looking for people who have had interesting and impactful lives. And on the whole, I think we do a very good job of hitting people who have made major impacts in medicine. Anybody who's won a Lasker Award, certainly anyone who's won a Nobel Prize, is going to get an obituary. It's definitely harder to spot people like Milton Edgerton, though, because I don't know them. And without speaking too much for my colleagues, we don't have many experts in obstetrics or oncology on staff here. So partly we rely on those outside awards like the Lasker that I mentioned to say, hey, this person's really important and we should write about them. Partly it's just trying to keep tabs on announcements and information from medical schools or from people in the profession who say you should consider writing about Dr. Edgerton. In this case, we didn't hear about his passing, unfortunately, until about a month and a half, 2 months later. Only when someone called to tell us that there's a memorial service for Milton Edgerton tomorrow. But we had no idea. The school didn't issue an announcement, and the name just wasn't quite big enough for it to register when he passed away.
Yeah, it's an interesting turn of events. It used to be that both the New England Journal of Medicine and the Journal of the American Medical Association, and in England, the British Medical Journal, used to do a lot of physician obits, but they don't do any of that anymore. So I guess it changes like everything else.
Yeah, and I should say there was something from, I think it was the American Society of Plastic Surgery. It was American Association of Plastic Surgery. That was it. They did do a short obit when he passed, but in part it's just there's a deluge of death, for better and worse, and it's easy for things to get lost in that.
Maybe in a future interview we'll pursue history and obits, but I thank you very much for your insight, Harrison. Anything else you want to leave us with?
No, other than if there's somebody I should be writing about or somebody we should be writing about at the Post, even someone we missed 1 or 2 or 3 months ago, let us know. We want to hear.
You've definitely got it. And of course, the invitation to come to Chicago, the pizza, is still on me. I hope you get home without having to use a rowboat tonight. And I thank you again for this interview, Harrison. You did a great job.
Thanks very much. Yeah, maybe sailing back to my apartment in a few minutes. Yeah.
Okay, take it easy, Harrison. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks.